Hey everyone, today on the Talent Alchemy, I'm pleased to welcome Dessalen Wood, an innovative HR executive, seasoned speaker, and with over 25 years of experience building human centered organizations. And Dessalen has led learning teams, HR teams at most respected brands, and today she serves as the Global Chief People Officer at Syntax, a leading managed cloud provider for enterprise application and a SAP partner. Throughout her career, Dessalen has been dedicated about developing leaders, designing impactful learning programs, and creating cultures where people and performance thrive together. And she brings a refreshingly human perspective to some of the biggest shifts: AI, hybrid work, and the evolving expectation from employees. Dessalen, welcome to Talent Alchemy.
Well, I feel honored. Welcome to 2026. Thank you.
Yes. And I have to thank Rebecca Murray, for introducing us.
Yes, it's great to have a mutual partner bring us together. So thanks to Becky as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Deslin, you have led people and learning teams across retail, entertainment, and now tech.
Yeah.
So, what do you see? What patterns have stayed the same, and what has changed in today's workplace, especially when AI has entered the people sphere?
It's a really good question because I think when something new happens, whatever it is, we tend to think that all the old sort of rules are out the door. And in fact, we often think things are binary. We're either the way we were in the past or we're completely transformed when really there's parts of us that remain the same and then there's pieces that change. I would say what remains the same is, what motivates people to perform, are always the same things. People want to feel empowered. They want to feel like they can make their own decisions. They want to feel like they're connected to valuable work and they're connected to people and that they're developing their skills. I think of that as like the recipe for general motivation. And that's the same across all cultures. And I would say probably across multiple generations. So those are constants. So if you're in my kind of role, you always have to have your eye on people feeling like they're empowered, connected, and that they are also developing. What's changed, I think, is the big thing. What's changed is that there's a technology that is presumed to be having a huge impact on every facet of work. So there have been technologies and great advances that have happened over all of the history of humanity, but generally they're more, I would say, focused on one area at a time or different focuses. And so people will talk about the invention of a printing press or when we went from farming to industrial agriculture. Those were huge shifts that people had in the workforce. They were mostly faced into certain areas and not everywhere at the same time. What you see happening here with AI is that the message is that everyone's work is going to greatly shift very quickly. So that's something new that's being introduced. Because if
Right.
you want to feel like you're mastery and you're developing your skills, you might start to hesitate as to what that really means, given that everything you're doing is potentially changing.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because caring for people versus replacing them AI. That's something what we have been hearing a lot from the workforce today. In my last podcast with Nena, she's the HR officer at Semus Cloud. We talked about that how we need to view AI not as the super villain but as a sidekick. Do you think leaders are stuck in this tension that AI is replacing? uh, or rather you should care for people?
I talk a lot about that as well because I do think that the reality is that I would say most managers or people who are leading teams feel that they have a lot on their plates, they're overwhelmed, and there has been a trend for people to, not to refuse management roles because they don't see the benefit for all the stress that you take on. And a lot of the time what we've been spent, especially since I would say, the post-COVID
Yeah.
is a lot of focus on mental health and a focus on balance and caring for our employees and ensuring that they are in the right environments to be successful. That being said, that kind of thinking sometimes seems to go completely against this idea that we can automate, and that's where we should be focusing. And the point is that automation should actually relieve some of that pylon of work that happens. That is, if I go back to my first example, people want to do meaningful work. If you're doing a lot of work that doesn't feel like it's meaningful and you have never ending piles of it, if you
Yeah.
can reduce that
Yeah.
through automation, you should
Yeah.
therefore have more well-being. And I think that those are the connections that are sometimes lost because we see automation as replacement and not as enhancement to reduce stress and provide more time to do better work.
Okay. So basically changing that mindset that AI is going to the automation would actually take away those redundant work and then care for more people by letting them do what they want to do.
Well,
More strategy
if you ask
focused, right?
anybody, I would say this, if you could have an assistant, would you want one? Well, yeah, of course, but there's no way I could ever get that headcount approved. These virtual assistants is really what most people are using, whatever tool you use.
Yeah.
We have our own
Yeah.
tool internally.
Yeah.
They play that role that no longer exists for the majority of employees.
Hmm.
And that role used to exist to take care of certain tasks so you could focus on other tasks.
Right.
So this idea that productivity gain should at first be focused on how to reduce the repetitive, mundane pieces so that you can do more interesting work, that makes sense. The other part, which, I don't think we can shy away from, is that if you're more productive, do we really need to add a headcount every time new work comes in? So
Hmm.
there's a bit of a trigger that everyone has is the minute there's a new project or anything that's slightly bigger is we're going to need more hands.
Hmm.
And I
Right.
think that's the thought pattern that's gonna be interrupted,
Hmm.
which is, yes, we have more work, but we have other tools now to do that work. How
Yeah.
do we understand AI enough ourselves to propose perhaps the development of an agent or an assistant
Right.
that would do this additional work, that would therefore save the company from having to employ more people every time there's a new project or a new piece of work?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I've been around delivery of SAP solutions for over 2 decades now. And to your point, every time there is a new project, the project managers starts looking at the resourcing seat. Okay, how many headcount I need? Do I need a QA? Do I need a architect? But today, I think that in that Excel or resourcing sheet, you need to see AI or agentic, how much work agentic can do,
Yes.
and then that will also affect the people count. So you talked about the people aspect, and this let's talk about HR, the HR tech. That was just AI in general, but how AI is affecting the HR tech world. Where have you seen AI genuinely improve how people work or lead?
Well, it's an interesting one here because you hear it for I always think of like this message changes over time. And I'm just thinking over time in the last year to 18 months. So, the usual most typical example you would hear is, AI can write job descriptions. And I'm thinking I'm taking us back 18 months. It feels like a years and years ago. But that
Yeah,
would be what you'd hear. People would say, it's so great for job descriptions. And so this was this exciting idea that this irritant for most of us, which is writing job postings, job descriptions, different kinds of job leveling, is it can be doing that en masse, and that these things don't need to be so specific and customized that they need a
right,
lot of revision. So it was
right,
like a real low hanging fruit. When we're moving on now, we're saying really what are the processes that we're traditionally have very hands on or multi tooled that be reinvented. So I would say that's the transformation I've seen now. So
okay,
when I'm thinking, we have a wonderful, we call them AI champions at Syntax. We have a wonderful one on our team named Sally Savage, and she's worked on different agents to help our recruitment team, to summarize recruitment notes, to be able to provide follow ups to leaders, and to automate pieces that were traditionally taking our recruiters a lot of time so that they can source more. And when you're looking for very, very high skilled people,
yeah,
the amount of sourcing you do is directly related to the amount of wonderful candidates we have.
correct,
So this is a great business case of automating an entire process around interviews to free up time of recruiters to do specialized sourcing. So that's different than I used it to write a job description or I used
correct.
it to redo my email, which are like kind of fun and maybe saved you a couple minutes, but it's not transforming the productivity of a team.
Yes. And recruiting is a great use case because that involves big volume of data, candidates' data, application. So I think that's a great use case, not just SAP success factors, but I see in general a lot of HR solution providers are investing their AI capability in recruiting. Is there any area where you think organizations should slow down in the application of AI versus more intentional with AI in some other areas?
That's funny because the idea of slowing down is, I think, maybe a bit of a new one because initially, if I talk to my colleagues, everybody thought they were behind. So there
Hmm.
was this imagined emergency, or you could say it's real. I believe most of our emergencies are imagined in this world. This imagined emergency to get as much AI out to as many people as fast as possible. And in many organizations, people just know that they have access to tools, whatever they may be, popping up. Maybe they're embedded in your email, maybe they're embedded in your different company sites. But there wasn't a real understanding of, as a result of this tool, you're now going to use it in these 5 ways, and they're optimized for our organization. And these are the outcomes we're expecting. It was really more, here they are, use them. And I think that panic might have reduced a little bit of the quality of the output.
Okay.
And that's where you hear those terms like AI slop. But what I
Yeah.
think you can even feel, and I don't know if you felt this, Rinky, is that when you see work coming that has an AI look and feel,
Yeah.
starting to get devalued.
Right. Right. Right.
People are like, oh, yeah, I wrote that. Now, it could still be great.
Yeah.
And the person might have done the most elegant prompt to get this
Yeah.
wonderful piece of work. But if it
Right.
has a certain amount of dashes and bold and indents, it's like your brain sort of goes, ugh, more
This
AI.
is AI. Yeah.
And I think that's part of what you just said.
Hmm.
We rushed at it. We told everybody just use it, use it, use it.
Yeah.
And if you're not using it, you're behind. But then
Yeah.
how they're using it maybe isn't as, I would say, as elegant as their work
Yeah.
was before. Because
Yeah.
when you're curating your own ideas and researching them and developing them and then creating a
Yeah.
PowerPoint, then booking a meeting and then presenting it, you've got a lot invested in that idea and you've got a lot of
Right.
depth. If
Right.
you're just putting in a prompt and it's spitting out a bunch of stuff and it says, do you want a PDF? Do you want an FAQ? Do you want a manager guide? It doesn't have the heart and soul of the organization's terminology, of the little flair that you might have had in it, and
Right.
you're less likely to be as invested in creating a great PowerPoint to go with it and booking a meeting to present it, and you might risk just dropping it in Teams and forwarding it to a bunch of people.
Without even, yeah. So that's sloppy work, right? Those are some great points. And I know the AI policing, I've seen a lot is happening in the education sector. And I'm based in Atlanta. Just a few weeks back, we had something in news. There was this student who wrote a paper which was debated by the professors that it's just AI generated. I think your point is great that you can still use AI to help with overall, but use your own research, your own experiment, more prompt, but get the manual work done by AI.
I think there's this back and forth around when you introduce a tool so widely, but we don't really have the experience to know what the best way to get the data and then what's the most impactful way to present it. You're not giving enough guidance to people, and then you're then penalizing them for maybe not being as thoughtful as you would
Exactly.
have liked. And I think that
Exactly.
this is where we need to keep that human side balanced, which is what's important for me right now is that you are able to get this project done in less time because you can
Less
do
time.
your
Yeah.
research faster. You can challenge your own thinking and you can ask AI to bring you relevant articles and links and you can
Mhm.
read them as opposed
Yeah.
to searching yourself. But I'm still expecting the person's knowledge and expertise of our industry, our organization, our customers to bring me something unique and very much flavored in a way that I can identify that it belongs in our environment. If it's generic in any way right now, it's quite low value.
You mentioned a great point, the guidance, right? Employees, anyone who's using AI, they need that guidance. So I'm just shifting to the leadership aspect of that. What are some leadership capabilities that will matter most in an AI driven hybrid world? Like how they can guide or mentor?
Well, you know what it is that there's a large quantity of information around right now.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that we are, as leaders, going to have a higher expectation that the person has been able in a short period of time to be able to access a lot of different data. Maybe it's comparisons to different organizations, different industries, be able to do more deep analytics so that what they bring to the table is stronger and tighter and probably going to be more compelling. So I think leaders, it's fine to be able to say, someone says it's going to take me 2 weeks to get you that report or that analysis. Is actually, I'd like to show you some prompts and a few ways to do that that it would
Yeah.
take you much less time.
Right.
Then, though, we also have to have the expectation layered on that if there's a way that you want data presented to you, if there's a story you want to have in there, if you want to have customized examples from our organization, our employees, or our industry, then I'm expecting that customization to be part of the delivery. And
Okay.
I think that when we do both of those things, here's how you get a lot of knowledge quickly. And then here's how you ensure there's customization and your delivery feels unique and authentic. Then I think we've really upskilled our team, but you've got to balance both.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to narrow down to learning and skills.
Okay,
That's
sure.
really the topic of my podcast, the Talent Alchemy. You have built a lot of learning programs. So, how do you think learning and skills based approaches can help organizations stay human and while becoming more data and AI driven at the same time?
Well, there's this one skill now that everybody needs to have, and that's what I said before is kind of unique because, maybe this one I'm thinking of the first is the first time we got computers in the workforce, and I'm old enough to remember that. I know that's a bit scary,
Yeah.
and everybody had to learn, whether it was Word Perfect or these programs we had, or even the first internet. That was the last time I was involved in something where everyone had to learn something new at the same time in order to be relevant. Now, that's a long time ago. So now what I'd say in the skills base is that we need to identify what are the core AI skills people need to have. And
Uh-huh.
when I mean core is
Uh-huh.
that there's entry level technology skills for most people, there's an intermediate player, and then you've got your super users of programs, success factors. We have one, or super users who can fix anything and understand everything. And we have those our SMEs of our modules. Those are my super users. But the rest of us are kind of low medium in
Uh-huh.
there. So, what
Yeah.
does that look like for AI? What is the expected baseline that we want our employees to have? And then we have to ensure they have that skill. So, the skills based approach is really saying for these roles, we need this level of understanding, and this is how we're going to enable that. And then in this role, which is maybe more specific, like a consultant or a developer, we're expecting this extra piece on top of your base knowledge,
Yeah.
how to design agents, how to
Yeah.
understand, or even how to evaluate agents that are in other tools like yours. And then the top level is the ones that are really building major transformational tools and optimizing workflows. And that's not everybody. But here's the issue, key. Right now, everybody's hearing
Exactly.
all of it at the same time.
Yeah.
You've got to be productive. You've got to be building agents. You've got to be evaluating AI in your tools. And they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed because they don't have years of experience where they've learned skill by skill layered on. It's as if you're supposed to learn the entire funnel and be an expert right away. So when you're saying, what do we need to do in skills based, is to really define what a strong and an intermediate AI user looks like. And
Yeah.
then how do we enable them to get there
Get
so
there.
that
Yeah.
they don't feel that they're being left behind?
Right. So AI literacy is a must, but the learning programs needs to be persona based or the user based. I like that. I think
Yes.
that's important. I think AI literacy is a key now
Hmm.
for any organization,
Yes.
especially tech. So, what do you think the role HR should play in helping employees to be more future ready rather than fearful of AI? And I'll just add that I think the Gen Z or the millennial generation, they adopt AI quickly because they have been more tech kids. But someone from like my generation, I've talked to my friends too who are in the tech industry. They're more fearful because they see it as a vast, complex, technical concept. So, what do you think as a HR they can help employees?
I think this message that everything is changing and no job will be the same creates a lot of drama
Right,
unnecessarily.
right, right.
Because not everything is changing overnight and not every job is going to disappear. So I think that doomsday thinking does not create great environments for people to adopt new ways of thinking, because then you're in this scarcity model where I have to protect what I have because it's going to go away. And scarcity thinking does not align with learning new skills. So that's it. So learning new skills comes when you're excited and you see the upside and you want to keep yourself current. And I would say most human beings are always like that. They wanna constantly be developing and moving forward.
Yeah, yeah,
So when you're talking about, the generational piece, as with everything, the longer you've been entrenched in one way of doing something, the
right.
harder it is to change.
Yeah,
That being said, you know, I would say if you look back to my parents' generation, people stayed in the same company often for 30 or 40 years. And so there wasn't a whole lot of shifts. They would have said I had a lot of jobs and a lot changed, but there was a lot that remained current. Any generation below, from Gen X down to the Zs, move jobs 3, 5 years. If you find someone's 8 or 10 years, that's fairly rare. And they sometimes also switch careers. So my husband was sharing this with me. It creates a certain amount of malleability that we have now that is kind of perfect for this kind of introduction of technology because we've had to reinvent ourselves so many times. Think of yourself almost starting a new role where you're going to reinvent how you do your work through AI. So I think that I would like to give people confidence that they can adapt. I think that's really important that they can adapt.
Yeah. And I want to talk a bit about managers, people managers. In general, people managers are stretched thin today. On top of their regular work, they have to approve workflows, schedule those one-on-one mentorship meetings, or approve time. So, how do you think AI can help reduce that burnout instead of adding to it, especially for people managers?
Well, when you think if you ever do a functional analysis, like you have people document how much time they spend every day, and then you look at like a pie chart, it's like an old school way of looking at people's time. You would ask, a manager, how much of that time were you spending either developing your people or working on something strategic for your organization? And they would say, well, I was in a lot of meetings that I probably didn't need to be in, and I was reading a lot of email. And so the idea that when you think of for a manager is how do we use these tools to reduce those kinds of workloads so that you can do two of the more important things. Focus on your people, because that always brings you
Right.
returns,
Yeah.
and working on something strategic. So, back to that with leaders, I think it's to be able to quantify to them the amount of time they should be saving if they were at an intermediate level of use of AI. And this is where we are not being great, which is actually providing an actual target
Right.
to be saving from anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a week using AI in these 5 ways.
Right.
All right. So now I have my 5 use cases. I have to
Yeah.
know how to do those. And my
Yeah.
expected outcome is a 10-hour savings. And with that 10 hours, here's my new expectation. And I
Yeah.
think if leaders understand how to do that for themselves, they can then bring that to their teams. Then you start to see gains, real tangible gains. Right now, we're saying use the tools, but we're not showing, I think, really clear use cases on how, nor are we tracking the intended time saving, nor are we giving clear goals of what to do with that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So leaders have to really think that's how I am going to stand out. I'm going to stand out in the really clear use cases I'm giving and in managing that extra time and ensuring it's going to value add.
Yeah.
That would blow my mind.
Yeah.
That would be, I think, a really amazing managerial response to AI.
Yeah. And leaders and managers, they need to also be careful that we do talk a lot about optimizing employees or upskilling them, but doing that without investing in the company culture or the employee capability is also very important. Do you have any advice for organizations in
Well,
that respect?
you can't get something for nothing, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
Just because there's a lot of YouTube videos and there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that's out there, I think there's a belief that anybody can learn how to do anything. And the truth is there is a ton of material, but I am a trainer, so I have to put like a warning on what I'm about to say, a trigger warning, which is that people learn from other people and they learn from highly customized interactions with people that feel very genuine. And so if you're going to send your people to a learning platform or to YouTube, they're gonna do that to be able to maybe do, I don't know, a couple of things on Excel, but the average person is inspired by someone that they recognize talking about things that they identify with. And
Okay.
I've gone on a lot of different YouTube things, and I find them
Yeah.
really interesting and provocative, but
Yeah.
I don't get on my laptop after and build things. We built our training based on our own developer talking to the screen showing use cases with our tools and our documents, highly personalized with very clear examples of how to use it inside our environment. And that really resonated with our employees.
Love that. If you could give one piece of advice to HR and the people leaders who are navigating AI right now, what would it be?
I think that there's three ways of thinking of AI. And the challenge, as I said before, is everybody's thinking of everything all at once. The three ways is what is my personal AI proficiency and literacy? that I need in order to feel comfortable in this environment where people are talking about automation, they're talking about process reinvention, where I feel comfortable in there to say, no, I think that we probably want to stick with this one, but I could automate here. So I think that we have our own personal journey we have to take of understanding the different kinds of AI. And we actually created an AI assistant that you put in your job, and it shows you where AI could fit in and what kind of AI would. And then we
Wow.
explain in a
Yeah.
video what each of those things mean,
Mhm.
just so you can be proficient in a meeting and you can feel your anxiety level drop. So I think this is the kind of thing that we need to be doing personally, my
So
step.
yeah. No, I was just going to say there's almost like a coaching agent. I would love to see that someday.
Yeah, it's exciting because I just a developer just told me that we've passed 1,000 conversations with our AI roadmap assistant. And it's really good because you can't ask people who don't
Right.
fully understand a tool to think
Yeah.
of how to use it.
Correct.
You're limited by your own experience.
Yeah.
So if it can broaden and provoke you to think, I didn't
Yeah.
think I could use it in that way. What
Yeah.
is a chatbot versus an
Yeah.
agent? And
Yeah.
provoke you to feel like you have more agency over the
Right.
transformation itself. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. Then I would say the other thing I'd say to HR leaders is that you need to understand, similar to what we talked about, whether it's talent acquisition or talent development or analytics, what is the AI that's being used inside those functions, either by a provider like SAP or by something we build in house, so that you're ensuring that you're transforming your department in terms of process reinvention to keep up with the current level of automation in your function. So one is highly personal. How am I going to use it? The other one is how am I going to make sure that my functions are using it? And if you have a senior level role, how am I going to ensure that this enablement message is being delivered equally to everybody in the organization?
Yeah. Yeah, I think those were some great insights and valuable feedback, Deslan. I hope if my listeners are listening to this, especially those HR leaders, I think that's some great lived experience. And I just want to thank you for your time. I know how busy you are as the Chief People Officer, and I'm really happy you could make this time for me. And I would love to, like I said, want to see that coaching agent someday. It sounds so interesting.
Thank you for having me on, Ricky. Again, thanks to Rebecca Murray for introducing us. And it was really great to talk about this. And if anybody wants to ping me for anything, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Dessalen Wood on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Stay curious, stay golden. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.